Perfect. What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the workshop. I hope you're all doing well. Now, in this video, I'm going to make a dedicated Mitre shooting board. I have made one before. Actually, one of my most popular videos was the 5 woodworking jigs that I did, and this is an attachment for a shooting board. It goes onto a standard shooting board for doing mitres. Works well, but it's a little bit cumbersome, and it's a little bit harder, especially when you're doing delicate small pieces, if you're doing small box making, that kind of thing. So I decided to make a dedicated Mitre shooting board. So that's what this video is going to be all about. It's a nice one. It's relatively simple to make and put together. It's good and sturdy. It really supports the plane. So we have a 45-degree block that the plane runs on, so the weight of the plane tends to keep it at 45. It's easy, be accurate with it, which is nice, and it's also good for doing delicate little pieces. So if you want to do small little mitres for little small decorative boxes, things like that, this one will do it, and it also will do larger boxes as well. So that's what this is going to be about. Now there's going to be a part 2 to this video as well, where I do a different style or a different take on this one, but we're going to keep it to the more basic one to start with. So let's jump on and get in and build this one. Okay, let's crack on with the project. Now we're going to start with the most simple shooting board first. It's kind of based on a standard shooting board. So I have a couple of videos already on making multiple woodworking jigs. If you guys want to check them out, I'll link them below in the description. I made this a kind of standard shooting board in one of those videos. It's just completely made from plywood. It's going to be the exact same thing, except we're going to have a 45-degree edge on the reference edge here, and we're also going to have a 45-degree block for our plane to run on. So other than that, the construction is pretty similar. I'm going to be using some 1/2-inch birch ply. That's just what I have in the shop. I have a couple of offcuts, so we're going to use that. And I'm also going to be using some of this red oak. Now this is salvaged hardwood flooring. So I've got a couple of bags of this stuff out of a skip. I've planed it up. It's a really nice piece. It's always makes me wonder how people can throw stuff like this out, but that's to my benefit. So we're going to be using that to make our 45-degree running block and our fence out of. So let's crack on. First thing we need to do is get this cut up. So I have a piece that's already cut square. I just happen to have it, and it's a pretty good length. So it's 445 millimeters by 445, or 17.5 inches by 17.5 inches. And I'm going to be using my 5.5 plane on this shooting board, so that's actually a decent enough size. I'm not going to be doing anything much bigger than, say, maybe 6 to 8 inches of boxes, so this will be more than big enough to do what we want. So that's going to be our base piece, and then we have to cut a piece to go on top of that that has our 45-degree edge, which we have to make sure we get exactly right. So let's do that. Okay, so like I said, we have our base piece. We just need to cut our piece to go on top of this. So I'm just going to start with a truing cut because I want to be as accurate as I possibly can. So I'm just going to put this against my fence, run a truing cut down here, then I can put that against my fence for the rest of my cuts. So let's get on and start with that. Now I'm going to be using my MFT table and track saw here because, like I said, I want to make this as accurate as I possibly can. But if you had a table saw or another means of cutting straight edges and keeping everything square, that's what you need to use. So a truing cut down here to start. Let's do it. Okay, just put a truing cut in that, square this board up a bit so it's easier to work with. Now let's decide on how wide we make our top piece. So, like I said, this is the base piece. We're going to put a piece on top of this. Our plane is going to run on this edge. So I've just measured in about 320 millimeters. That's going to be our top, or about 12.5 inches. So that's what our pieces that we're going to be mitering rest on. So that's a good size top for making different size boxes. And it gives us plenty of room out here for our 45-degree running track for our plane to run on. So let's cut this piece to 320 millimeters, nice and simple. Okay, there's our two pieces. I just need to cut this one to the correct length now, so that's the same length as my bottom piece. And I'm just going to do that by setting up the stop on my fence. Just set up my fence, line that exactly up with the end of my track. Just like that. Tighten down my fence, and that's my measurement. Okay, so there's our baseboard and our top board cut. Nice and simple so far. We have a nice space for our plane to run in, and this is a good wide top to support our piece. Now, this is where we have to begin to get a little bit more critical. This actually has to be quite exact. So I know I have a reference edge here. This is going to be my edge that I'm going to keep square to my face. It's also going to be the edge that I'm going to put my 45-degree cut in now. And I also have a good edge here that I know was referenced off this edge to go against my fence. That's important because I want to keep this cut now perfectly straight once I put this edge back against my fence. Now, like I said, we have a 45-degree cut to put in this piece. So I've beveled over my track saw to 45 degrees. Now, never rely on the markings on your machine, especially when you're trying to be critical, because they do get out of whack and you do have to readjust them from time to time. So I've just taken a known 45. This one is pretty accurate. I've just put it on the base plate of the track saw. I've put it up against the blade, making sure that I'm in between the teeth. Now the track saw is completely plugged out and not powered up here, so don't worry, I can put my hands near the blade. Now that's exactly at 45 degrees there, and I'm a little bit past 45 degrees on my actual marker. So I've locked that down now. I know I'm exactly at 45 degrees. So now I'm happy to make this cut. So I have a good straight edge, which is perfectly square to this edge. That's going to go against the fence. And we're going to run our 45-degree cut in this. Let's do that. Okay, so I'm just getting set up to make the cut here. Now we're going to make sure that we get this exactly right, like I said. Just going to make sure we clamp the board. It's against my fence. I know that this table is perfectly square, so everything is set up with the dogs. Now I have my track saw beveled over. Now the thing to remember when you bevel over a track saw like this is that all the weight is now to this side and it can fall off. So just make sure that you keep pressure on this plate, because if that tilts slightly, obviously you're changing the angle. You can see it's tilting up there now. Some track saws do lock themselves on. I can actually tighten these down a little bit more to help me with that. But we don't want to tighten them so much that we can't actually push the track saw. So that should be good. Now, a little bit too tight there, but like I said, just keep a pressure on the plate, make sure that it doesn't tilt over, and you should be good to go. Okay, let's make the cut. Okay, ready to make the cut. Just want to check, make sure nothing is impeding the saw, and this is going to go smoothly. Everything is against the fence, everything is still nice and square, everything is good, the angles are correct. So let's make the cut. Like I said, we have to be a little bit critical here, so it's always a good idea just to check everything before we do the final cut. There we go, happy days, that's our 45. We'll just check that now, make sure we're 100% happy with that, and that should be good then to fix to our top. Okay, so I've just checked our cut and it is pretty good. It's actually exact the whole way down, which is exactly what we want. So that is absolutely perfect from what I can see from my 45-degree square there. Happy days. Now, we're just going to fix this piece to the bottom piece just like that. This is nice and simple. This doesn't have to be critical. We don't have to worry about that. It's just a case of glue and screw this. So just like the last shooting board I made, I'm going to put some countersunk screws in the bottom just like that. Glue the two pieces and put some screws in it. We'll make cleats then to go on the bottom, screw them on, and then we need to get the fence on. And the fence is the critical part because that has to stay perfectly square now to this edge here. So I'll get on, make the cleats, screw this together, and when we jump back in when all that's done, because that's nice and simple and it's only covering old ground anyway. So let's get on, I'll do this and then we'll make the fence. Right, so I have the top on and I have the cleat on, so I just did the boring stuff off camera. And like I said, it's like exactly the same as the other shooting board. So we just have some countersunk screws here just to screw on our top, some countersunk screws for our cleat, that's just to catch the back of our workbench. a little bit of glue underneath, and that holds this whole thing together just like that. Now, the fence is the next part we want to get on. So, like I said, I've been using some of this oak flooring, so I've milled a piece up. I've just taken it to the Mitre saw, put a 45-degree cut in one end. Then I've just drilled out some oversized holes, so a Forstner bit first, and then a 8mm hole the whole way through. So that will allow for a little washer just to sit down in there just like that. I can put a wood screw through it, and because the hole is oversized, that'll give me a little bit of wiggle room to adjust this and make sure that it's 100% square. So this is the part we want to be critical with now. So when I fit that on my shooting board right about there, I want to make sure that I'm perfectly square with this edge here. Now it's a little bit hard to get a square along a mitred edge, but I'm just going to feel along this edge, make sure the two of them are exactly lined up, because I know my Mitre saw is exactly square, and I kept these two edges perfectly parallel. So I'm going to square off this edge just like that with my engineer square. It's the squarest square I have, and we're going to fix this in place. And like I said, I have a little bit of adjustment, so we'll do a couple of tests, cuts with this. We'll check for squareness, and then we can adjust our fence a little bit either way if we're any way out. So like I said, this one is critical now, so we need to make sure that this is perfectly square with this. So let's get this screwed on. Right, let's get the fence on. Now, like I said, we have to keep this perfectly square. This is all about accuracy here, but we have a little bit of adjustment. So I'm just going to feel along this edge, make sure that those two edges are perfectly aligned. I know that's not 100% accurate, but it will get me very, very close. Then I'm going to use my engineer square just to hold this fence perfectly square, and I should be good to go. So that edge is perfect. I'm perfectly lined up with this edge on my engineer square. I have a screw in the center just to start off, so we can adjust the fence either way. So I'm going to screw that home just like that. Make sure we keep everything perfectly square. We'll get our other screw in. And like I said, we have a bit of wiggle room here, so I have a couple of mil of adjustment either way, because we drilled some oversized holes, so we can do a test cut and then we can adjust our fence to make sure we're 100% accurate. Let's lock that one down, and the final one then. So lock our fence in place. You can just reference that edge there. Now that looks perfect from both sides, and everything is squared up. So that's our fence on, and like I said, we'll do the final adjustment now when we have this assembled. Now we have to get on and make the runner 45 for our plane. Let's do that. Right guys, we're going to make the running block now for the hand plane. Again, we have to be as accurate as we can be here. This is going to be cut at a 45-degree angle. The plane then will sit on that and run at 45 degrees to our workpiece. It should run also square to our workpiece, so we get a nice mitred edge. Now, this again is just some of that salvaged red oak flooring. I've just glued or laminated 3 pieces of it together into a block, and I'm going to cut this now at 45, and that's going to run against this edge here, which will keep this nice and square to our fence, and our plane, like I said, will run along this. Now, a table saw would be ideal here. You could just run this through at a 45-degree angle. I'm going to do that on my bandsaw, and then I might finish it off with a hand plane or on my jointer or my planer running along the fence, just to get that nice and smooth. It doesn't have to have a parallel edge both sides, but this angle must be 45 degrees the whole way along its length, and we need to check and be 100% sure that that is the case, and this will be our reference edge then that we will put this against. So let's get on and do that. We have a difficult enough cut to do on the bandsaw here now, so let's do it. Okay guys, I'm all set up to make the cut at 45 degrees. Again, checked everything to make sure that I'm 100% accurate, that everything is at 45 degrees. I have my fence set, I have my bandsaw set, I have my feather board set, so we're good to go. Let's get on and make the cut. Okay guys, we have the 45 in our block, and that actually turned out pretty well. A slight little wobble in the end of the cut, but it didn't do any harm. So just checking all the way along it, and we are exactly 45. Now, obviously the bandsaw leaves a little bit of a rougher cut, so I'm just going to hit this with the hand plane very lightly, just to get a nice smooth face for the plane to run on, and checking that we're maintaining that 45-degree angle the whole time, because that is absolutely critical. So, a couple of strokes in the hand plane and we should be good. Right guys, there we go, a nice planed face, nice and smooth, and just checking that we're 100% the whole way along, that we've no high spots, no low spots, and if we do see any daylight under the ruler, we can just take it out. Actually, a little high spot right there. So, let's give that a little hit, make sure we flatten that out. And that is pretty good there. So I'm pretty happy with that. We can now get this fixed to our shooting board. Okay guys, a little bit of adjustment with the hand plane, and we have a good 45-degree angle, and I've checked it now and it's absolutely perfect. So I've just screwed on the runner for the hand plane. Now I've not glued this in place because you want to keep checking this over time to make sure that it's still at the correct angle. So I have 3 screws in line here, and then I have 1 just step back. So you can put some pressure on the front of the 45 with the 3 screws here, or you can pull it back a touch with the 1 screw in the middle on this part. And that'll give you a little bit of adjustment. And you can also shim this up to get it exactly 45 if something goes a little bit off on you as well. So there is a small bit of adjustability in that, building it this way. Now let me get you in for a close-up, I'll show you the exact angle. Okay, just give you a quick little visual reference here. So I have my checkbox set up and it's 0. So this is where the workpiece will be sitting. Now I have 3 screws into the front of the 45, like I said, and I have 1 in the middle at the back. So we can pull it a little bit this way or push it back a little this way if we need some adjustment, if we don't get our 45 exact. But there you go, I've zeroed it now on where our workpiece will be sitting. If I put this on here just like this, there we go, exactly bang on 45 degrees, which is exactly what we want. And like I said, we have a little bit of adjustment either way, so that's happy days right there. So we're good to go. Right guys, we're all assembled, checked and roughly tuned up. So I'm just going to get a little bit of machine wax or paste wax on this, just to help the plane just shoot along there a little bit more freely. So I'll just rub that in, and should help our plane glide nicely. Now, we need to check that our fence is 100% square. We know that we're good here. We know that this is at 45. We know that we're referenced along this edge. So just might have to do a small adjustment in our fence. Just a couple of small little pieces of peely here. I'm going to put that against it. I'm going to check. So we're going to check our 45, make sure it is actually 45. We'll shoot this, and then we'll see how square we are to the side that's against the fence. Okay, so just looking at the piece, I can see that I'm just ever so slightly proud on this end. Now it's only an absolute fraction here, so we just need to bring this end of the fence a little bit this way, just a touch. So I'm just with a really sharp pencil, I'm just actually going to put a pencil line here, and it's literally going to be just the width of that pencil line of an adjustment that we need to make. So it's going to loosen the screws, just the front two. It's going to pull that slightly just over that pencil line and tighten them back down. And that should be all the adjustment we need. Now let's shoot another piece and see. Okay guys, so I've made the adjustment to the fence, and that is perfectly square along this edge now, which is happy days indeed. It was actually back this way it needed to go. So you can see the pencil line, it mightn't come out on camera, but it was maybe half the width of a pencil line. It needed to move this way. So with that correction made, we are perfectly square along that edge. And our miters are matching up beautifully there now. So we have a perfect 90 degree, and we have really flush, no gap miters. So that's really nice for making little small boxes, or even larger boxes we can do on this now. So we can do long miters rather than, say, picture frame miters on this jig. There you go. Okay guys, so there we go, one mitered shooting board complete. Now, it's a lot easier to use, like I said at the start of the video, than this original design. So this was just an attachment for a standard shooting board that I had made. It works, it does work well, but it's a little bit cumbersome. This one supports the plane, so the plane sits at a 45 degree angle. The weight of the plane is essentially doing all the work on the angle. and you can just hold your piece, especially small, delicate pieces, against the fence, and it's very, very easy to shoot them. Even larger pieces, if you're doing larger boxes, you can do that as well. So it's a nice, easy jig to use. Now again, it's all about being accurate with these things. The more accurate you can be, the better your jig will turn out, the better the results you will get on those miters. So again, make sure that your face or your edge of your fence is perfectly 90 degrees to this. Make sure you get your angles 45 exactly right. Again, don't worry, you can always shim this up or down. If it's a few degrees out, you can get it with shims. Again, you can pull it up and down with the screws as well, and leave a little bit of adjustment in your fence, and you should be absolutely good to go. So that's it, guys. I'm going to get out of here now. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you have. That really helps me out a lot. Comments and questions below. I always try to get back to everybody if I can. And if you're new here, think about subscribing. There's going to be more videos like this coming up. In fact, the next video, we're going to do a slightly different take on a mitered shooting board. It's going to be more of a traditional style that you can use for moldings and things like that. So that's going to be the next video. It's going to be kind of a part 2 to this one. So we're going to be adding some more woodworking jigs to the workshop. So I'll see you in the next one, guys. Take it easy.